At Impact, we like to say that self-awareness is the ability to notice yourself in the act of being yourself. It's also the starting point for leadership. But what do we actually mean by self-awareness, and how can leaders develop it? To talk about this with me, I was joined by senior consultant Liz Wilson. Hello, Liz. How are you?
Hi, Dan. Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yes, very well, thank you. And thank you for joining us and giving us some of your time today to talk about self-awareness. But before we get into that, let's give our audience the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. So we normally ask our guests to kind of introduce themselves within 60 seconds.
Okay.
Can you do it?
Yes. I might not be able to fill the 60 seconds, but
I'm sure you will.
I'll have a go. Okay, well, I'm Liz. I've been at Impact for quite a long time. Much of my career I've spent here. I guess I've stayed because every project is different, every assignment is different. And basically, it's been a learning experience for myself. So if we're going to talk about self-awareness, there's no better way to develop your self-awareness than by working for Impact, I would say. I've been well and truly grilled by myself and colleagues and clients for a quarter of a century now.
A quarter of
yeah, literally.
That's one way of putting it for sure. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. Let's get straight into what we're talking about today, which is self-awareness, and let's put it into context. What do we mean when we're talking about self-awareness?
Okay, well, it obviously is a very broad topic.
Yeah.
But I would say we all live and work in communities and societies and organizations and families. And therefore, everything we do in life is with and through other people. Mm-hmm. And in order to be able to build the relationships that just mean that we can exist and function in those groups, we need to have some kind of self-awareness in order to be able to live and work with other people. Yeah. So developing the capacity to see yourself from the outside and be aware of yourself just enables you to understand, anticipate, and manage yourself, and therefore achieve perhaps better results in your relationships and with other people. So fundamental to everything that we're trying to do, I guess.
Yeah, and I suppose what we're focusing in on as part of this is self-awareness for the leader, like the importance of self-awareness as a leader. So what would you say is the importance of self-awareness as part of a leadership toolkit?
I'd start by saying I think of it as being able to notice and listen through the mess of yourself, mm-hmm. on whatever's in your own mind, whatever you're carrying about with you. So to be aware of all of the filters, yeah. and everything that's already happening, and to be able to acknowledge that. You can't rid yourself of that, but to understand all of that baggage for yourself and still be able to listen to the person who's sitting in front of you, just to try and understand them and where they're coming from, to be able to see situations around you with a degree of objectivity, and to understand what you're bringing into every conversation and every situation, what's good about that and useful about that, but also what's going to get in the way for yourself and for other people. Without it, we're experiencing the world in an entirely unaware and subjective way, which isn't helpful to the people around us. So having the awareness doesn't always mean that we can manage ourselves, but at least it's a step in that direction.
And I suppose once self-awareness is a sort of a skill that's, if you like, that's developed, would mean that then could be, if you're in a leadership position, you could then start to develop that within your team as well. Would that be right?
Yeah, I think it's definitely part of a leader's role to encourage that. I mean, we talk a lot about psychological safety, emotional intelligence. So much of what leaders are trying to do depends on that openness of relationships, showing vulnerability, just being a real human being and bringing your whole self to work, etc. Being a role model of that and encouraging people around you to do the same. It makes working life more efficient, happier, it's just a more genuine experience, I think, for everybody.
Yeah.
If everybody is perhaps being a little bit more of themselves and understanding themselves.
Yeah, it's certainly something we're starting to see a lot more of, which is that's human-centered approach, isn't it, to leadership and a self-awareness. If you become more self-aware, you can then be and how you're feeling in yourself. I would imagine that you can then start to pick up feelings within individuals that maybe surround you, and kind of then, as you mentioned earlier, in that noticing skill of noticing if other people aren't all right or need a bit of support.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are different categories, I guess. There are different levels and aspects of yourself around which awareness is useful. For example, to understand your own preferences. So for me to understand how I like to work helps me to see that you work in a very different way. I like a bit of chaos. I like things to be uncertain. I will resist structure till the very last minute. And that might drive you insane.
Yeah.
And so, but I can't help you work in the way you need to without understanding the way that I need to work.
Yeah.
We all carry around a fundamental position in relation to other people. You know, you might have heard the phrase, I'm okay, you're okay. So to understand whether I carry around with me an attitude of, well, I'm okay, Dan's okay, or whether I perhaps have a downer on myself and I carry around a different attitude. But I need to understand what that is. And I might need other people to help me to understand that. I might be completely unaware of that, but I can develop that self-awareness through feedback and conversation with others. So I think preferences, some beliefs about how you relate to other people fundamentally, even emotions, being aware of your emotions in the moment. It can be all too easy just to act from my emotions.
Yeah.
I am quite an emotional person. My emotions are often quite near to the surface. So I know that probably makes some people a bit wary of me. And now I can't always control that, but at least I know that about myself.
Yeah.
And so just that self-awareness around my emotions perhaps helps me to be more aware of your emotions and notice that. And how are you and how are you feeling? And do I have to dig deep with some people, whereas with other people, they wear their heart on their sleeve, etc. So self-awareness shows up in so many different aspects of life, all of the time, every day.
And it's something that I suppose managing yourself or having, first of all, it starts with awareness, isn't it? But then I guess it takes some action to be able to say you might be so overworked that you just can't see the wood through the trees. You have the self-awareness to be able to or you might have a moment of self-awareness, step back and go, okay, this isn't helping anyone, particularly me. So, but sometimes that comes easier to some people than others. So what can leaders do to develop their self-awareness skills, if you like?
First of all, knowing being able to see that you are an individual entity and that you can be studied and looked at objectively, that the way you are isn't inevitable and eternal and universal. And I am a big fan of the saying, fish can't see water. Just to be able to see that you're a fish swimming in water, but you can't always see the water that you're swimming in. So just to be able to see yourself objectively and know that self-awareness is a thing. So being curious about yourself, noticing your own reactions, noticing your own feelings in a moment, your own physical reactions. If I'm flushing red or if I'm clenching my jaw, to be more tuned in to what my body is telling me, what my face is telling me, and then noticing other people's responses as well. Just being interested in reviewing and reflecting. I've just had a conversation with somebody. How did I behave in that conversation? What outcome did I get from that conversation? How was that other person looking at me? Did they shut up very quickly because I kept interrupting them and I wasn't listening? Did I do a good job of that? So noticing in the moment, reflecting and reviewing afterwards, and by asking people, which isn't always an easy thing to do, but just getting into that habit of saying, how did that go from your point of view?
Yeah.
So not always in a formal performance appraisal situation, but just on a much more regular basis, saying, how am I doing in this project? What's it like working with me? What do you find? How do you find it working with me? What's going well for you? What do you notice about me? And helping people to be comfortable, giving me some feedback as well. So that's why I have to manage those emotions as well. Because if I'm going to ask that question, I've got to be ready to take it as well. I've got to have an open mind.
And I think it's important not to necessarily go too far the other way, isn't it? It's almost being hyper self-aware where it becomes almost a detrimental, where you start critiquing yourself too much. Maybe that, I guess, where that's good to check in with other people and have that conversation, like, how am I showing up? How is this going? How is it landing? That's a kind of crucial part to it, so that you don't end up being super critical of yourself to the point so it's, for some people, they'll be finding it so that they don't even give themselves any self-awareness at all, but then they could go the other way. So it's finding that balance, isn't it? Which I guess is all part of developing that self-awareness skill to find that balance.
And I think you can bumble through life and never even think about these things. But I think if you choose to put yourself forward as a leader of other people, such an important role, you're such an important person in those people's lives. I think you owe it to them to embark on that journey of self-discovery, but not swing too far the other way, as you say, Dan. You've still got to be yourself. It's just about finding your own style and way of doing that, and perhaps smoothing off some of your edges, or, as I said earlier, just even knowing what you're likely to do and being a bit ahead of yourself. But people don't want, you're not a walking checklist. No. You're still a human being, and you've got strengths and you've got flaws, and that's okay. We're all just humans doing our best. So I'm agreeing with you.
So as a sort of a way to kind of wrap this up, is there like any quick sort of like a little exercise that somebody who's watching or listening to this could go away and sort of start that process of self-awareness? Is there anything is it as simple as taking an hour out and going for a walk and kind of having a good think? Or is there anything else that's more structured? I know structure isn't one of your preferences necessarily, but is there anything that you can think of off the top of your head that might be useful as a sort of a tangible takeaway?
I would say, if you know your style, you know your preference, you might want to search for some kind of personality test tools. If that's your kind of thing, then just go and have a look online and fill in a questionnaire. If you're not going to believe your own instincts, then perhaps look at some of the many tools and models there are out there. If you're inclined to be a bit more conceptual, then I would say some critical reflection, and just ask some people who know you well, who you think are going to tell you the truth. Just tell them that you just want to understand a bit more about what it's like hanging around with you.
So I suppose from what I'm taking there, then it almost starts with asking questions. So it's both asking questions of yourself and asking questions, as in asking questions to yourself, but also asking questions to other people and getting that feedback from other people. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, and as well, I'd say work on your skills of noticing other people. Sometimes at Impact, when we're running development programs, we often use an observer role. We often get that where we might be running an exercise or an activity, and we ask for some people to stand back and just observe, and people might be reluctant to do that, but I can guarantee they're usually the people who have the most powerful learning experience, because we so rarely allow ourselves just to sit back and observe. So even just standing back sometimes, even in a busy street, and watching other people's behavior, really tuning in and noticing, can be the beginning of thinking, well, do I do that? Well, how do I sound? Do I look like that? So working on your observation skills of others can be a really accessible way in to noticing more things about yourself as well, if you don't want to go straight into deep and meaningfuls with other people.
Yeah. Well, what a great way to kind of summarize all that and finish that up. So before I let you go, we're going to ask you the final question that we always ask all of our guests, which is, knowing what you know now, if you were to start your career right back at the beginning, what would be the advice that you'd give your younger self?
Okay, I mean that's a
big question.
A big question.
It really is.
Yeah, it is. And it's difficult not to come up with cliches, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I would genuinely say to young Liz starting out in the local, it was a museum organisation I worked for in the HR department a long time ago, and I would just wish I would say to her, have more confidence, just have a go at things, put your hand up for things. All those people around you and ahead of you, they don't know what they're doing either, in the most respectful and positive way. They're just people who've had a go and put themselves out for things. I would say apply ambitiously. I've got two children of university age, and it's what I say to them: apply ambitiously. You'll kick yourself afterwards.
I'm even writing it down. How about that? Apply ambitiously.
Yes. Yeah, because you're going to be as good, and if you're not, then you've lost nothing by trying. Don't wait. Don't hang around.
So that advice, do you live by that now?
I certainly say yes to more things. I've certainly developed more faith that whatever it is, I'll make a fist of it. I'll have a go. I'll have a go of it, and nothing terrible will happen if I fail and if we make a mess. Yeah, definitely much more of a risk taker now, and will speak up more than I ever used to.
Yeah. Well, that's a great bit of advice, and as so much so I've written it down. So thank you very much, Liz, and thank you for joining me today and giving us your time and insights and experience into talking all things self-awareness. So thank you very much for listening and watching. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Dan. I've enjoyed it.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of In Good Company. If you would like to find out any more about Impact or the work we do, or perhaps you'd like to explore our leadership playbook, then you'll find all of the links that you need in the description of where you found today's episode. So thank you very much for tuning in, and until the next time, take care.